Welcome back to another episode of Cameras and Caffeine, the podcast where I help you take your creative passion and turn it into an innovative side hustle. Today I'm here with Seth Crocker. Seth is a barber, film photographer, and the co-owner of the local photography business, Hermanos Photo. You're in that with Marco, right?
That's correct.
Today we're drinking Death Wish coffee, the world's most caffeinated coffee, so I've got a cup of AeroPress Death Wish. Seth has one too.
It's amazing.
It's great, and if you're looking to wake up and stay awake for probably the next 48 hours straight, get some Death Wish coffee. So this podcast is available in both video and audio formats. You can watch clips on YouTube, so feel free to subscribe to my channel, Clip Play TV, to see them there, or leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So Seth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, so I've been in photography for maybe, I guess, 4 years now. Besides that, I've been a barber in that same time frame as well. And yeah, man, I mean that's pretty much what I've done the last few years. If you want to know about my life or whatever, like I'm from Mississippi. I'm from Iuka. It's a small town just right across the line from Alabama. And yeah, I've been here in Alabama since 2016.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what drove you to film photography? What got you into it?
So it's kind of crazy. I had friends in Huntsville. So let's backtrace a little bit. So when I first started working for Greasy Hands, I worked in Huntsville, and I lived there for 2 years. And in that time frame, I worked with a guy at Starbucks before I became a barber. So I had to go to school and I had to do all this before I became a barber at Greasy Hands. And I met this guy named Heath Atchley. And Heath, he kept on bugging me. He's like, man, you gotta get into film photography. You gotta do this. I was like, no, man. I was like, let me do digital. He's like, all right, do your own thing. And so I did digital for probably 6 or 7 months. And I kind of got off of it, I just hit a cold spell. I stopped shooting. I was just focusing on my job as a barber. And then Heath, again, came up to me and he's like, dude, you need to do film. And there had also been another photographer that pressured me into it, and his name was Matt Pittman. And Matt kept on pressuring me to do it because he used to come by the shop. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll give it a go. And I bought a Canon AE1. And I feel like it's the best camera you can start off with. And
it's the most automated too.
Yeah. So AE1 program, and I started using that, man. And my first roll, I bombed like the first 20 photos, but those last 15 made it well worth it. And so after that, I loved the process. I loved how, it made me think each composition that I was taking.
What's your favorite film roll that you've ever shot with? What kind of film do you like to shoot with?
So by far, my favorite film that I've ever used is Portra 400 for sure. Portra 400 is just super versatile. The colors are great, and like in post, like you can do a lot to fix, color correct and everything with Portra. It's a lot more forgiving than some other films. To say that, though, I will say that Ilford is black, just standard black and white is some of my best shots I think I've personally taken have been on that. But for in general, Portra 400 all the way. Yeah.
That's awesome. What would you say to someone who has never shot film but has always shot digital? Why should they shoot film?
So I would say you need to shoot film because film challenges you. Digital, it's instant gratification, just one shot after another. You don't like the shot, okay, well, I'll just shoot again, whatever. Film, it's more tedious. It's more thought-provoking than digital photography. So that's why I would say get into film, because it challenges you to compose your shots rather than just keep on shooting until you hope you get a good shot, like on a digital. And so with film, like, it's very unforgiving, like even if you shot the best roll of your life, if you do not, take the film out the right way or whatever, it's all ruined. And then, you're left with, oh man, like I just wasted all this. Well, no, you haven't. You just trained your eye for 36 shots or however many shots you just did. And
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah. And that's why I say go into film photography, because it is a challenge, and and it's not instant gratification, but the reward is well worth it if you put your time and effort into it.
That's what I love about film too, though. Just the fact that it is unforgiving, like you said.
Yeah.
You don't have a chance to shoot a photo, look down, and some people call it chimping, because you're like kind of like that a lot with the like posture. But just you don't have that ability to preview your images after you're done with them. You really don't know if the roll is a crapshoot or if it's some of the best stuff you've shot in your life. It's just so much fun and so interesting, and it forces you to live in the moment more too, because you can't, you're not so focused on fine tuning that shot in post, like in the field in post too.
Yeah.
Like you don't have that ability to kind of zone out. Like you have to be in the moment. You have to be looking more for your composition. That's a really big factor with it too.
And to bounce off of that, photography is based on light, and so that is what film is like. If you're lighting, if you don't shoot the right film at the right time of day or whatever, your roll is scrapped. If you don't put the right settings in, if you don't have your ISO and the right, if it's not set at 400, and let's say you pull the film or you push the film or whatever you do, there's so many things that come into this equation to make the shot right. And it doesn't seem like that much to the average person, but to the person shooting it, there's so much that goes into it to capture a really good shot on film. And so like you were saying, it's such a great rewarding feeling when you do accomplish that. And I that's why I would tell anybody to grab a film camera.
Yeah, and it's like a different kind of vibe for the community too, because you don't have there's a lot of people who are quote unquote gearheads, myself included.
Yeah.
I'm shooting on an 80D and an R5, a Sigma 35 Art, and a 24-70. I've got all the gear I need, and I love that. It's fun. But with film photography, you're not always chasing after, does this shoot 4K?
Exactly.
Does this shoot 8K? Does it overheat like the R5 does? But I've never had my R5 overheat on me. Knock on wood. But, with that too, I just love the community, the fact that it's more people focused because of that. It's a little less thing focused too.
And exactly, through film, I have found out about so many people that are really talented, someone can pick up a digital camera, and they can, you can be really good. Don't get me wrong, in the way you edit and everything. But for someone to have an eye with a film camera, because you do not know what you're getting until after the fact, and so you have an idea, but that's the thing that's amazing to me is you see some of these people shoot these shots, and you're like, oh my goodness, how do they do this? And with digital, you're like, oh man, that's a great shot, but that would be a little bit more easy for me to recreate rather than on film. And so that's the thing for me. It's just super challenging.
Yeah, definitely.
In some aspects. For the most part, it's not as hard as people make it out to be. But when it comes to getting a shot that you have to time right, imagine shooting a car going by with a film camera, and how you everything comes into effect. The way the sun's coming down. Well, did I shoot it with the aperture too low? Did I shoot it with it too high or whatever? And that's the thing with film photography. It's just it's simple, but yet it's complex,
Definitely. And it's so interesting to look at it too, because now it's sort of this alternative community, right? And it's sort of like a lost art that's coming back a lot. We talked before the show actually about how medium format film cameras, I had a buddy who got one for around $100, something like that at a thrift shop. That same camera is worth $400 now.
Exactly. And so a Mamiya RZ67, which is is one of the most heavily sought after medium format cameras out there, because you got guys like Joe Greer, guys like Willem Veerbeek, all these big social media, YouTube presence guys, present guys that are huge in the film community. and they're making waves with these cameras, and people are like, well, that's what I need. That's what I got to get. I got to get a medium format. And those cameras were already decently pricey for what they were before the film craze really came in. And now, like, you have a camera that was once $550, $600 selling for $1,300 without a lens. So, I mean, it's a great thing that film's becoming more popular, but it's also, it kind of stinks in a way because everything's shooting up because everybody wants to do it now.
And it feels like none of these, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of these cameras too are like, kind of vintage in a sense. And I don't know how many of them are in production, so they're only going to get more rare.
That's it. And, and at that point, when it becomes more rare, I mean, anybody can slap any price they want to on that. And the thing, like I said, it just makes it harder for people that want to branch out, that want to try, because a medium format camera, it's a different ball game compared to 35 millimeter. On 120 film, it's you get way less shots. I think it's 16 shots per roll, and so and the quality is amazing. I mean, it's almost unmatched. I mean, many people in professional settings still use them to this day for that reason.
I'm just looking into, going off of what you said earlier, film is not as daunting as people think. It looks daunting kind of looking at it. One of the things I like to do on Cameras and Caffeine is make things more accessible to people.
Exactly.
And to kind of explain things that people wouldn't have otherwise thought about. With film photography, would you like to kind of walk people through what's the process with that? What are the basics, the camera basics with film photography?
So camera basics, you need a light meter. You have to have a light meter because a light meter is going to tell you what your aperture needs to be, what your ISO needs to be, what your shutter speed needs to be, and that's all the three main components that you need for when you're shooting film photography. You need to know those. To get more complex about it, those are the basics, is what I'm saying. So shutter speed, your ISO, and your aperture.
The same three settings on digital cameras too.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
So you learn these basics on a film camera. If you can work a film camera, you can work any camera. That's the way I look at it, because, I mean, it teaches you the basics of how to set your camera up for certain lighting situations, and that's, like I said, that's what photography is figuring out the right light to take what I'm saying, to take a picture, to compose a photograph. And so if I could give instructions, learn that, understand that, get a light meter, or get a camera that has a light meter already built into it. A Canon AE1 program, that's why I say it's one of the best ones to get, is because if it has a working light meter, that's already half the battle gone out. And it's pretty accurate, compared to most. I mean, you would probably get a better reading if you bought an actual light meter, and a good one, I can't think of the brand name right now, but there's one out there that's $200, but it's and I've used it, and it's perfect. I mean, it works awesome.
And that's another thing that sets apart film photography from digital too, is that the meter will tell you what those three settings you need to dial in are, what they should be, based off of a certain spot of exposure. So if you've got, for example, on the video version of this podcast, I've got a bit of a highlight on my forehead right here coming from the backlight. If I were to point a camera with a light meter like the Canon AE1 at my forehead right now, at this particular point, it would tell me something along the lines of, you need an aperture at, f5. Yeah. You need, your ISO is the type of, that's another thing that's different too. Your ISO is the sensitivity of the film. So you don't set your ISO. You actually buy ISO 400 dedicated film rolls. Mm-hmm. And that film roll itself you have loaded in the camera. The entire time you're shooting at ISO 400 with that roll. And then at that point, it'll tell you your shutter speed, something 1/125. And it tells you, it exposes for that one spot. So that's another thing that's tricky with it. It could expose for my forehead, and you're yes, my forehead's bright right now. But if you were to darken everything to bring all the details of my forehead into exposure, you're going to lose some of the detail in the shadows over here too.
Exactly. And that's the game you got to play with it. I mean, it's metering for the lighter shadows is typically when I do it, I meter for the shadows, because when you go in post, it's easier to bring down them highlights and to get most of the detail back. But if you meter for the highlights and you lose your shadows, you can't get those shadows back, and like it looks pretty bad. Like, I mean, it just depends what kind of look you're trying to go for. If you're trying to go for a more, grungy, like, more, I don't know, like definitely old school look, then that's different. You'll definitely get that look by doing that, or pushing your film, which is a whole different ball game. But yeah, so like exactly like you said, metering that's your shutter speed and everything, and it just tells you all of that. Like, roll that into one, what film you buy, because you have that set ISO and everything. And even with that set ISO, you can still pull it or push it, which means, for instance, for people who don't know film, like if you bought Portra 400,
400 ISO, right?
400 ISO. Yeah. So that's what that means. And so the film cameras, once you set it there, it has to stay there for the whole roll. Like, you can't change it. It's definitely not like digital where you can just flip it on the fly. But with that being said, so let's say you bought Portra 400 and it's brighter outside than you expected. You can pull the film to 200, which means you're dropping that film, which is going to give it it's going to give it like a more of a pastel look, not as contrasty. And if you reverse it, let's say you move it to 800, you move the ISO dial to 800, you're pushing the film, and so basically you're making it more you're giving more contrast to the image. Shadows are really dark. It gives you that really old look, and a lot of people push for that, so.
That's so cool. And you've been doing film photography a lot longer than me. I mean, I just learned that. Yeah. I didn't know you could push and pull film in camera.
Yeah.
That's what's so interesting about it, too, is there's always something to learn with film and photography in general, too. So.
And going back to, film and digital and all that, I feel like film teaches you, like, how to be simplistic with your digital. Because, like you said, we're a lot of us are gearheads. Like, we want all this stuff. We want to get this and get that. In reality, it's just like we talked about the other day. When we were getting coffee, like an 85 and a 35 millimeter lens, like that will almost do anything for you that you need to do. But it just depends on the situation. What you want to do. But like with film, if you use like for me, I use a 28 millimeter all the time. I can't see myself using another lens, on that camera. I could maybe use a 35 or a 85 because I'm used to that on digital. But like I bought a 50 millimeter, never used it. Like I used it like on one roll. I didn't care much for it, and so like it teaches you how to really compose your shots versus having like a zoom lens or whatever.
We were talking about that the other day, too. I have been moving away from zooms a little more as much as I can with my work, especially my contracting work. For my business, I've found myself when I'm on shoots I have a 24-70 on you right now on the R5. And it's great. It's versatile. But that's kind of the problem. If you have that freedom of a zoom or a telephoto lens where you can go from 24 to 70 at a constant range of f2.8 for your aperture, you end up, for those of you who even aren't as much, into the photography game in general too, or videography, when you have a prime lens, you have it set to 35, so it's a certain width. So right now I have a Sigma 35 Art on the 80D that's on me right now. In a lot of cases, you're going to need to move physically with your camera to frame a shot a certain way. And that's another thing. We could get more deep into compression and stuff like that, but that's like really complicated. But I mean, at the end of the day, it basically boils down to if you have a zoom lens, you're going to rely more on changing your focal length and the entire look of the depth of your shot. And rather than moving and reframing it to something that could look way better, you could end up getting a really, really good shot by moving physically with a 35 millimeter than you could, say, if you stayed in one place and you're like, oh, I'm going to shoot this at 24. Oh, I need to be closer. I'm not going to get closer. Screw it. I'm going to put it into 70. At that point, you just change the entire character of the shot without actually giving it thought.
Exactly.
So.
And for me, like, I almost bought a zoom lens. Like I wanted, I never have bought a zoom lens. Like I'm not trying to make myself out there like I'm like better than anybody, because I'm not. Like I really researched it, and I wanted a 24-70 just like you have, because I feel like, dude, that's got to be the most versatile lens, because I mean that's such a huge range for you to do so many things, right? And so I sit there and I was like, man, I'm gonna get me a 24-70, and I sat there for months, like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna get it, and I literally had it. Like, I had a, what did I have? It was a, I can't remember the name of the lens, but anyways, I had it in the cart on Amazon. I was like, I'm about to get this thing, and then something inside me was like, am I really gonna use it that much? Because at the time, all I ever used was 35, and that's still pretty much what I use, and I use 85 every now and then, but 35, I've gotten to the point where, it challenges me to get in a position for a shot, like, and to make for instance, like to make someone look powerful, or to make somebody to look more, I don't know, like, I'm trying to think of the word, to look more bigger than themselves, I guess, is like, shooting at an angle down below and doing it with a 35 millimeter, and it's fixed, and all you got to do is look down and like pull, especially if you have like a camera that has
like a flip screen.
A flip screen, and you really can do that with a zoom lens, because for one, to get it to set just like a prime lens does, and to have the quality as a prime lens would at that distance, would be harder. And basically what I'm trying to say is, like, focusing on one lens and mastering the way that lens works, I think translates to you being a better photographer in the long run.
I would argue, too, that you are literally probably the master of 35. You're the best person at shooting with a 35 that I know.
Dude.
And some of your work from digital, like, just blows my mind. That with 35, and you shoot with, you don't shoot with a really expensive lens either.
Mm-hmm.
Just, back to the gear argument, you shoot with a Sony 35 1.8, right?
Yeah, that runs like $399. It's compared to a lot of lenses, that's super, that's
used,
like,
it's even cheaper.
Yeah. And so with that being said, like, the 35, I don't know, one of my favorite photographers, which is Forrest Mankins. And Forrest is this guy that's out of Montana, and he's just shooting. He's such a natural shooter. And that, like, I wanted to mimic that. Like, he was one of the people, like I didn't want to, like, when I say mimic, I just wanted to take some of his aspects of his, inspiration, and I just want to take some of his aspects of his photography and apply it to mine. And he shot with a 35, and I didn't know that. Like, I had been shooting with a 35 for a while, and then I found out about Forrest Mankins, and he was shooting with a 35, and I was like, well, crap, like, me and him are similar in that way, because I was, like, drawn to his photography. I was like, man, like, because, like, I was looking at some of his pictures. I was like, man, I can see myself taking that. Like, I can see myself doing that. And it was funny that his favorite focal length was 35, and mine happened to be the same. And so, like, ever since then, I was like, man, this guy is awesome. And so, like, I've been keeping up with all his stuff for a while now. But talking about 35, it's like, I think they say that's the lens that's closest to the human eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's another reason I was kind of drawn to it and buying it in the first place, because I wanted, as simple as it sounds, I just wanted to shoot what I saw,
It looks like a perspective.
Yeah. And so with all my shots and stuff, it's always challenged me how to frame my shots. Always, am I going to put this in front of my shot to make it appear like I'm further away? Am I going to do this or that? And that's kind of what's helped me get so good with that lens. And I'm not saying I'm just the greatest at it, but I have figured out, like, oh, I can shoot with a 35. Give me a 35, I can do it. Now, any other lens, I'm like, kind of got to figure it out. But 35 is definitely one of my favorite focal lengths.
Yeah, when you get confident with a focal length and you are able to deliver, if you can say, I know for a fact I can get that shot, then you've mastered a lens, especially with that. I would highly recommend, because I started on a Canon Rebel T7i. I bought it new the first week it was available.
Really?
And I had it. I love that camera. I still have a feeling deep down I'm going to get another one day. I sold it not long ago, but I started with a kit lens, and, it was cool, but I was like, I didn't really develop a passion for photography until I bought a 50 millimeter. I actually used my mother's first, and she had a 50 millimeter 1.8 STM for Canon, and I put that on my camera. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, it's game changing.
The first time, and that's the thing with primes, it's different from zooms too. Primes tend to have a lower aperture, and you can get more of that depth of field, that bokeh that so many people talk about, and that sharpness too. But it's a double-edged sword. If you shoot at 1.8, not a lot's going to be in focus. It's a lot of depth, right? So you could end up in a situation where you're on a full-frame camera, and literally their nose is in focus.
Yeah.
You got to be careful with it. But
Exactly.
yeah, and kind of shifting focus. Now that we've talked a lot about your film, let's talk about what you and Marco are doing with Hermanos Photo.
Okay, so Hermanos is something that we came up with probably in September. It's definitely young and it's definitely coming about, but things are happening pretty soon. We're getting booked. We're booked out for April, which is great. So
Wow.
we're excited about that, and we're still full-time barbers, and so, which is great. We love cutting hair and everything, but we've definitely grown a passion for photography. And Marco's been kind of like my project, like to build up, like to get him good at it. And dude, he's awesome. Like he's really taking it on. Marco's the kind of guy, like he's if he wants something, he's gonna get it, And so like he wants to be good at photography, and I think he's achieving that. Like he's getting really good. He's still got a lot to learn, but like for where he's at, I could definitely see him working a job for sure as a photographer. And so with that being said, where we're at right now, we've been building it up for the last few months, just taking pictures of people we care about, taking pictures of little random events we can get into. We've taken pictures at local concerts and stuff like that, just to put our name out there and get people talking about us. And another big thing is like we just want to be really involved in this community, and that's the thing. Like, because we are so new to this. Like when it comes to like not photography in general, but new to like making a business out of it. And yeah, man, I mean it's something awesome. We want to be that place that we can tackle anything. That's our goal. Is a lot of people focus on whether it's weddings, commercial commercial photography, real estate, whatever. A lot of people have these niches that they're just good at. Well, we want to be well rounded. We want to be able to tackle any project someone throws at us. And that's kind of like where me and Marco, like, we're taking on things that anybody could throw at us, and we research it and we ask people that do it. We're really getting involved with the community, and we just want to, if people want to help us, or if they want us to help them, we're all for it.
That's awesome. Marco has an eye for it, for sure, for photography. I've known a couple different people who, some of them I've actually taught photography from like the ground up, and like just. You basically, once you give them those three settings, ISO, aperture, and shutter speed that we were talking about, they just soar.
They do.
They have a natural knack for it. And I do think you and Marco are two of those people very, very clearly. And it's awesome, too. I've seen him shoot, and, like, I've handed him a camera a couple of times, and, like, just the shots he takes, like, it's really awesome.
It's interesting to see how, because it's not like he's been doing it forever. He's fiddled around photography here and there throughout his life, and so have I. But, the last few years I got serious about it, and then he's just gotten really serious about it since September, October. Mm-hmm. And to see him, how he composes shots and everything, he's researching on YouTube. He's getting influence from all these different people, and you can see it. It's reflected in his photography, and it's awesome, man, to see somebody just keep growing. And like you've seen where they started, and now they're over here now. And they're just continually climbing up this mountain to get better. It's awesome. That's great.
And, kind of talking about this podcast, of course, focuses on turning creative passions into income-generating side hustles. There's a lot of people who want to do what you and I are both doing right now, and certainly the different kind of niche market that you and Marco are targeting, too, with that, in that there's people who want to pay their bills with photography eventually, and people who want to do it full time at some point too. There's also people who just want to do it for fun and make some side cash, and that's always great.
Exactly.
I know people who don't want to make money from photography. They just want to keep it purely fun, no pressure, and that's cool too.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Awesome. But kind of like focusing on what you're doing with it, and you're building a business from the ground up, essentially. And there's a lot that goes into that people don't always realize. And just kind of looking at it, I love what you talked about with like starting out, kind of like in the community, doing stuff for friends, because that's really just kind of a great way to go at it. I've told a lot of people that I've helped with their photo and video business, kind of getting it going. A great way to start that is to start doing free work. I mean, you have value. Your time and your work has value. And so you can't do it forever. But, kind of getting that portfolio and building it, it's a win-win situation for you to be able to just go out there and, I watched a YouTube video the other day going back to that because YouTube is such a great resource for
absolutely.
Yeah, just learning everything. You should do at least your first 10 jobs for free or low cost. And that will help you to have something to show people. And it doesn't have to be your best work in the world. Because at the end of the day, what's important about starting a business like this is that you have something just to show people. And there's a lot of people who will trust you. And, there's going to be that one person, there always is, that just kind of takes a risk with you. Like, not like a risk too much from the standpoint of like, they have faith in you. And they're like, here's a large sum of money, get me these shots. And that's really a stepping stone. And getting to that is, it's much easier than you think. You just have to put in the time and put in the work and deliver clients the best experience that you can. Because at the end of the day, something I've run into with my years of contracting experience at this point is that you're always going to have people who objectively on paper may be able to deliver a more complex product than you.
Yeah.
But if they can't deliver, at the end of the day, people are always going to pick someone that they know or somebody who is the most friendly and gives them the best experience and value. Because value is always going to be a much more critical component than just pure skill.
Exactly.
Skill set comes with the value that you deliver. And so, just kind of like giving my 2 cents on that, I'd love to hear from you. What's your best advice or recommendation to somebody who's looking to start a business and, with their creative talents and passions and really turn that into something that puts bread on the table?
So my advice is like exactly like you said, like you have to be good with people. People, your skills are going to get you places and stuff like that, but having the connections with people are going to get you even further. And so that, like, being involved in the community, being with other photographers, learning, growing together, because we all want to be successful, and this is the way I look at success. And I quote this from a guy that is one of my favorite artists. It's Charlie Crockett. He's a great country musician, and he was doing a podcast, and he said this. He said, "This is success. Imagine success as a house. Okay. Some people can walk through the front door. All right. Some people have to go to the side of the house and go to the back and go through the back door. And some people have to climb through the window. And some people have to get a shovel, dig underneath, go underneath the ground and get through the basement to get to success." And that's so true. For some people, success is fast and it's easy. But for some people, it's really hard and it's not fair sometimes. But the thing is, the point he's trying to make is like, don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
If you truly believe in something and you think you can make something out of it, go for it. And that's what you got to do. That's what's going to push people to believe in you, is because when other people don't believe in you, and you believe in yourself, and you have a few friends that believe in you, and you can just keep lifting yourself up, and people are like, well, he's actually making moves. He's actually doing something. I'm going to believe in this guy. And it just kind of ripples, and it's a domino effect, I didn't mean to hit the microphone. But it's a domino effect, and like these people start believing in you, and like it makes you believe in yourself even more. And I think that's important, to achieve a successful business or anything in life,
Definitely. Because just having that confidence, a lot of people misinterpret confidence for ego. And ego is a path to failure, but confidence is a path to success with that too. If you're confident that you can deliver something and you show that confidence and just give that to a client, I mean, that's huge with anybody, just in general too. Like, if you're confident in your passion and your talent, that makes such a difference with people. People see that, like you're saying, and that makes such a difference with that too. One of the, I worked with a marketing agency a lot last year, and I have for the past couple of years off and on, contract work stuff. And, one of the best pieces of advice the company owner gave me was never, if something goes wrong, never let the client know that it's gone wrong. Exactly. You always have contingencies. You do your best, and you're not fixing a mistake. You're making an adjustment.
Exactly. You're making an adjustment. And, I can segue this to barbering. Barbering, as me being a barber, like, I deal with people almost 17 times a day, 17 different people a day. And with that being said, like, if something happens during the haircut, like, let's say I go a little bit shorter than I expected, in the back, I'm confident enough in myself that I know I can fix that mistake. And you don't have to let the client know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they're going to be just fine because they know that you have confidence that their haircut's good and that that your work that you've done for them is good. And that's what you have to have for people to believe in you. If you were to do a haircut and you're like, yeah, man, I think it's good, who's going to believe in you? And same thing with photography. If you're like, yeah, I think I did a good job on those pictures, what do you think? It's not about what you think. It's about what you sell, and you got to sell yourself with confidence. And that's not an ego. Like you said, it's not an ego thing. Like, confidence and ego are two different things. Like, if I went around saying, oh yeah, I'm the best photographer in Florence, okay, that's a different story. But if I'm going around saying, yeah, I can definitely do that for you, and I can make that happen for you, that's a completely different story. And like you said, like, that's what's going to get your foot in the door with so many different people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you kind of actually touched on the next thing I was going to talk with you about there too. You're a full-time barber right now, which is, it's just a testament that if you have a side hustle, you don't have to throw everything to the wind immediately and just live by that side hustle. You can build it up over time with something supporting it too. And, kind of going off of that too, how would you say that, what has your experience with, running your barber, essentially business for it through Greasy Hands, how has that been beneficial to your creative skill set too?
So, being a barber, you have to map it out in your head before you do it. And what do you do when you're taking a photograph? You map it out in your head. And so before each client, like, I look at their hair and I'm like, okay, I know I can do this, but I know I can't do that. And I know their hair's going to do this, yada, yada, yada. Well, photography, translating from that, from cutting hair to photography, it's like, okay, the lighting's like this. I know I can take this shot from over here, and if I do it at this angle, I'll get the shot I want. And so, so with being a barber, and helping my creativeness with photography, I think it's helped me the most in the long run, because it gives me what's the word? It's like
a canvas.
A canvas, maybe, And so, like, it's that's the way I look at it. Is because let me think. Okay, so when cutting hair and everything, like, there's certain things you have to do to make a product look the way that somebody wants to. And same thing with photography. You have to visualize what somebody wants. You got to think, and you can't just think in your head, because what you think in your head and what somebody else wants could be completely different. So I think as a photographer, barber, whatever, in any service job, like service, where you're providing a service for somebody, I think you have to think, what would they want? How can I put myself in their shoes to get the product that they want? What's going to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what's helped me, translate from barbering to photography so well is because, like, when I take pictures, it's like I try to make it feel as natural as possible. That's my goal, you know. I try to limit posing and everything. Like, I won't pose. I'll pose if I need to for, you know, for certain shots, especially if that's what the client wants. But for the most part, I want them to feel comfortable as possible. And because if you can make somebody feel comfortable, because we all know at first when we start shooting for people, not everybody is photogenic, and not everybody's comfortable with getting their pictures taken. And so what do we have to do as photographers? We have to make them feel comfortable, which could take 20 to 30 minutes. You know, I always say my first shots are crap, you know, because most of the time. Now, sometimes, like, I'm like, okay, that's a great shot. I got lucky. But in most of the part, it's not the way I want them to be, and it's not the way they want them to be. It's because we're both going to feel for each other. You know, we're both figuring out, okay, this is what I want, this is what he wants. Let's make that mesh together and make a product at the end.
Mm-hmm. It's how you, like, sort of get comfortable and get acquainted with your clients too. Mm-hmm. I love the way you talked about that too, mm-hmm. because, like, I've always, like, kind of internally, like, realized that, mm-hmm. but never, like, talked it out. You know, when you start a shoot, you know, throughout the course of the shoot, it's about, I mean, you've got once you've got your skill set down and you've mastered a focal length and you're comfortable delivering that service and you're confident in that, that's one thing. But getting comfortable with clients and making, you know, like, starting a shoot, what you said is so true. The fact that your first shots, while they're not always necessarily the worst in the world, your last and your, like, I find that in the middle of the shoot towards the end is always the best stuff.
Absolutely.
So.
And, you know, that's my favorite part, is like the middle or the end of the shoot, is because that person's starting to feel more comfortable. They're laughing with you. They're feeling more natural, you know, and you can get them to do different poses and they feel more comfortable, you know, like they're starting to like, it's like you formed a bond, and now it's like, you know, like now we can make some real stuff. We can make some real work out of this. Not saying that the first pictures can't be real work, because they definitely can be, but and like you said, for me and for most photographers, and yourself included, I mean, it's just like you get to that I wouldn't call it like magical point, but it's like something's happening, and like there's like a meshing of like personalities, because, you know, we're all different, and so for us to have that moment to where we're like, we're going to create this image that's got like an emotional feel for somebody, or emotional feeling, or, you know, something that they have something in touch with, that's what it's worth, you know.
Definitely.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you chase that passion, is that, like, it's for those moments. Mm-hmm. So, and those moments make it all worth it, make all the hours of work. Because that's one thing that a lot of people don't always realize when they pursue self-employment options too. It's that you're not working a 9 to 5, you're working 24/7. Mm-hmm. You running your own business and getting into that too. And I'm not even personally doing it full time right now. I'm doing a pretty close amount of hours to it while I'm a college student. I am in my last semester of my degree in science of communications, and I'm going full time in May. And you and Marco are working towards having like a studio space and having it be a very significant part of your life next to your barbering business too.
Exactly.
And so, like, just even building up, even if you're not going to do it 24/7 full time, it's going to take a lot more time and investment than you think. And that's also why you have to love it, you know, because if you're in it for the money, you're never, I mean, yes, it pays very well. I was talking with a friend from Birmingham not long ago. I had lunch with him, and he does contracting full time right now for video.
That's great.
And, like, you know, he was saying it is becoming, in the past 10 years, creative work has become some of the highest paying work in the country. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. I mean, there have been certain shoots where, I don't like throwing numbers out there, but there have been certain shoots where I've made pretty close to $1,000 in a day.
Yeah, exactly.
From 2 hours of work.
Exactly.
And their potential is there, but it's not something you can do for the money. You have to love it. And if you don't love it, it will show. If it's not a passion, it's not a passion.
And I completely agree with you. I mean, and that's the thing, like, what me and Marco established, like, we're not doing this for the money. For me, it's always been a passion of mine for some reason, I've always been drawn to photography, and, like, even before I was actually taking pictures, I've always enjoyed it. Like, you know, like looking at pictures, and then I had an iPhone 8 Plus, and that's all I used. Like that's all I had. I was working at Chick-fil-A and everything. I didn't have the money to go out and buy like the cameras I wanted or anything. So when I became a barber and I started making the money that I could invest my money into the things that I'm passionate about, why not? And so with that being said, like me and Marco, our goal is not to make the most money or to make all this money. I mean, if we make great money, that's awesome. But when we're taking pictures and stuff like that, there's not a feeling like it, man. It's relaxing. It's it can be kind of tense at times. It's just like anything, but for now, I mean, it just feels like we're taking these moments and we're making people happy because we're taking these pictures and we're giving them this work that they can always look back on and be like, hey, Marco Seth did that for me, or like, hey, like, you remember that time? Like, they can talk with their family. Like, you remember that time like they took those pictures for us? I love those pictures. And that's what I want more than the money.
And that's what's awesome, too, about, like, your situation is cool in the fact that you and Marco have a 9-to-5 that you guys seem to love. You seem very passionate about. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to, essentially, you have that, and you also have your photo business that you're building up. And you don't have to compromise one or the other. They work together in harmony. Mm-hmm. And that's really cool. Like getting in a spot where, I love to explain this to people too. Like you don't have to do photo and video full time if you don't want to. You can be in a situation where you're doing a 9-to-5 that you love and you don't have to ever give up on or compromise. And you can be doing that, and you can also be enjoying something that gives you value on the side. And sometimes that value that you give to clients gets, invested in you as well. You're able to charge your worth, and you're able to do what you love essentially at that point, again, 24/7.
Exactly.
I mean, you get off of your 9-to-5 and you just go to something else that you love in a different area. Mm-hmm. And that's really cool.
And it doesn't really feel like work. I mean, it's just like when I'm cutting hair, I just feel like I'm hanging out, just making people look good. And they happen to pay me for it, which, I mean, it's great and all, but like, it's awesome to do something that you love and to also be like, get paid for it in a way, and it's nice. But it's not. I was cutting hair for free before, so like, and I was taking pictures for free for a long time before. And I just started charging now, and I mean it's something else I'm figuring out right now, how to charge and how it's like it's all new to me. But it doesn't feel like work. Like, and I could sit there and research for hours on stuff, and it never does feel like, oh man, I just hate this. I can't do it today. So
that's one thing. Kind of as we start getting kind of close to closing. That's one thing I love about the photography community that you kind of pointed out too. I have been in places and worked in places where the community, sometimes there are certain individuals that kind of gatekeep their creative talents and locations. And I understand a certain component of it from the standpoint of you don't want your spot to become flooded with other people. But at the same time, when you gatekeep all of your resources, skills, and assets, you're never going to have progress. And you're not going to, the way you achieve progress and the way that you achieve growth is always by collaboration with others. You've got to have friends in plenty of other places too. As an example, I never individually feel threatened locally when somebody says, oh, I'm getting into photography. Because if you do, that's the wrong mindset.
Exactly.
That's amazing. You should celebrate that person. I'm a firm believer that collaboration breeds success. And so with that, I always make it a point to where if I have a job that I have something else going on that day, or I have work going on, here or there, even if sometimes there have been like $500 jobs that I've handed off for people, it's like an hour or two. I make it a huge point to believe in people the same way that people believed in me when I was starting out. And I always make it a point to refer people, because referrals, collaborating, hanging out with, talking with, and just being open with other photographers and creatives is the true way that you build success. You never achieve success by tearing other people down. In life, in every avenue, the way that you succeed, the best way, is always with building other people up around you.
And you couldn't have said it any better. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, Like we want to be we want to be friends with everybody. We're not trying to make enemies or anything. Yeah. We're not trying to kick anybody out. We want everybody to be welcome, and like that's the whole point of us like with a goal and set to maybe have a studio one day. And that's, if it doesn't happen soon, that's okay. If it happens later, whatever. But the goal is like we want the community to share it. We want people to be able to, join us, or vice versa, us join them. We want people to grow. If someone doesn't want to do a job and they want us to do it, we'd love to. And that's the thing is like, if you gatekeep and you do all that stuff, you're not growing. You have a limited. You're putting yourself. You're actually detrimental to yourself because for one, you're putting yourself in a box, a gate, And so, if you open up that gate, you can grow infinitely. And you hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, it's all about collaboration effort, and it's all about establishing these relationships with other people that do the same thing that you do. And why not just? It's good to grow by yourself, but it's greater to grow with others.
I think you really hammered that point home too with that. It's been wonderful talking with you about all of this, your film photography, your barber's job, your 9-to-5 that you have too, Hermanos Photo, your digital work. You have so much to add to, and I'd love for all of you guys to keep up with Seth too, as with every guest I have on the show. He has a lot to offer in terms of value, and it's just awesome to see, follow people like him with his work. If you want to follow Seth, what's your Instagram handle? What's your work?
Okay, so yeah, for my personal, it's at thatredhead44, but for me and Marco's page, Hermanos, it's at Hermanos_photo, and we're welcoming anybody. We want as much people to follow us as we can, so we can keep growing this.
That's wonderful. So follow Seth at those socials. Follow Marco as well. I'd love to have him on the show at some point. And follow Hermanos Photo and follow their journey with starting their business. So thank you for watching and listening to the Cameras and Caffeine podcast. If you would like to see more of this content, feel free to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating if you enjoyed this. It helps me a lot to just kind of gauge where things are going. And feel free to, if you're on YouTube, comment on one of the clips or the full podcast of this video. Leave your comments, questions, or suggestions, anything you have with that. You can also run over to my subreddit, r/ClipPlayTV, if you have any more in-depth comments, questions, or suggestions. And as always, see you in the next one.